Oh, hello there, guys. I didn't quite see you there. I was too busy playing my bass because I like to just jam on it every now and then and get a little bit of that. But anyway, here's the thing, guys, and homie sauces and pimp kings alike. When it comes down to it, the world is full of very interesting metal acts all over the world. And the idea for this stream and this kind of idea kind of hit me like a bag of bricks. I wanted to sit down with myself and really just try to figure out for myself going forward what is the best country out there in the world as far as metal music is concerned. What country out there provides us the best metal sound, the best metal scope, the best everything that really gets us going and really showcases to us that genre that is metal music. What is that? That's really what I wanted to talk with you guys about today and really be able to help start the conversation of which country actually is the premier, optimal, best country for the metal sound. It's a very important thing to understand and be able to, more importantly, know, because whenever you really get down to it, when you have good metal music out there, you usually have a hotbed or something like that. Usually these hotbeds erupt where, well, how do I put this? These countries, they don't just become overnight sensations where all of a sudden, you really just become the best thing out there in a bag of chips, where you have one band and that's really it in a scene. Usually you have scenes where, these bands all of a sudden, collectively come up as a group, where they collectively have a group sound, and together they become better. Well, we want to take you through and really figure out, which areas are going to be the best areas for heavy metal. Now, just so you know, the United States is going to be considered individually for this, as in each one of the states is going to be considered its own individual country. That being the case, we're going to start it off by just marking the United States on there, simply because we'll have to do a separate episode marking off individual states, where individual states are not going to be are going to be dismissed as from the conversation. But for right now, the United States, as we all know it, is going to be considered for this because, well, like I said, we're not actually determining the winner today. We're determining the starting point for helping us eliminate the conversation. So yes, by the end of this episode, pretty much we're going to see a lot of the countries that, well, nobody ever visits, on here. A lot of third world countries are basically going to be eliminated right here. We're going to see a lot of Africa go away, if not all of Africa. Probably most of Asia go away, and pretty much any island nation's probably going to go away as well. You're going to see a lot of our European nations stay. And really the big question mark is going to be when it comes down to Europe, when it comes down to which individual American states, and whether or not certain places like Russia stand up against the other countries out there. But like I said, the conversation's only fun if you people are involved. So, get involved. Biscuit sauces. To start things off, the United States is really a premier idea for it. I want to start it off by marking them down. Can't really go wrong with the United States. It's one of those starting point countries that really just has just so much to offer, and that's really the big thing about it. It's got so much to offer you as far as a good starting point. Bands like Metallica, Slayer. We had the death metal scene from Florida come up, where you have Cannibal Corpse and you have Death itself. When it comes down to it, it's really hard to just look at and really hard just detract from the United States' influence. It really is just too difficult to actually do. As far as another country that we can already basically just say, yes, this country is going to be on there, is definitely going to be the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is one of those that you really have a hard time dismissing, simply because of the fact that the United Kingdom has been just so influential with bands like Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, just from those starting points. But you also have bands like Napalm Death. You have bands that just really come through it and give you kind of a different taste of what goes on it's really hard to detract and say the United Kingdom does not deserve to be on here in any kind of scope. Another country that would definitely be very difficult for us to make this list without would be Sweden. Sweden, of course, is going to have the Gothenburg team, bands coming up on there. These are things like Dark Tranquillity, In Flames, bands like that have that kind of just really, kind of almost death metal-y sound, but just really kind of different and more interesting, intricate, and interesting in so many different actual versions. Gives you a nice touch. Now, that's one of the big things about it. We also have bands like Amon Amarth that come from Sweden. I forget whether Opeth's from Norway or Sweden. I believe they're being listed right now on metalstorm.net as from Sweden. Yet I'm for some reason I keep thinking they're from Norway. I don't know. I think maybe someone may have changed that or whatnot. But I think I forget which one they're actually from. But we do have that kind of feel from there. We actually have the scene Gothenburg, of course, coming from Sweden. Very hard to dismiss Sweden itself as being a country that isn't deserving to be on this list. Catatonia being a great band that comes from Sweden. You just see those kind of things just erupt from right there. Then we actually look over just one country to the right, and we see Finland. And Finland, of course, as we all know, is just a hotbed, if you will, for the power metal scene as well as for other ranges of death metal and folk metal. Really getting a lot of interesting stuff from there. Bands like Winter Sun, bands like Nightwish, Children of Bodom, of course. We see bands like Sonata Arctica. Really great stuff. Hey Sky, how are you doing, buddy? But yeah, Finland has to be a part of the conversation. So if we pull the scope back right now, we've included the United Kingdom, Sweden, Finland, and the United States as a whole, which we're going to go through individual states on a secondary episode to do a follow-up. It'll be episode 1.5 of this series. But so far we've established four baseline countries, and to be honest with you, in a lot of ways, it'll probably come down to those 4 countries when it's all said and done. It'll be really hard to fight against those 4 countries as a whole. But there are other countries that we're going to be continuing to include as we keep going further down the racket. Not because like I said, this is an inclusive episode, not a dismissive episode. We're trying to build our baseline of all the countries that really metal is around at, involved at, and then go from there. And by the way, any thoughts are actually cool. I know, right? No joke, Sky. That band is one of those bands that I have been grooving to so hard. And they're Canadian. It's hilarious to me. Next country we're going to add to this list, because we cannot have this list without this country as well, is going to be the country of Germany. In Germany we see ourselves having bands like Blind Guardian, one of the best power metal bands in the world. We see also the Teutonic thrash scene coming up from there. Those are bands like Creator, Tankard, bands like Venom. If I remember correctly, I may be incorrect right there, and I apologize if that happens. It does tend to happen. Drugs are bad. No, but there are certain things that I will just forget here or there about individual countries. But yes, we have the Teutonic thrash scene from there. A good power metal scene with Blind Guardian, Halloween being definitely kind of the forerunners of that scene. Definitely putting things in perspective for us, and really helping us kind of develop that kind of idea right there. Very good stuff going forward. Now, the next country we are going to be adding on there is going to be, if I remember correctly, it's going to be one that we cannot have this list without as well, is the third of the Viking states, the final of the Viking states, Norway. Norway is definitely another one of those three. Those three countries, Finland, Sweden, and Norway, it's very hard to really detract from any of those three as being one of them having superior metal influence. They're amazing when it comes to metal influence. But Norway, you're going to see the bands like Dimmu Borgir, one of the best, black metal bands out there. You're going to see, bands like Immortal, another one of those death black metal album bands out there. You're seeing, acts like enslaved, an emperor. Again, black metal. Black metal is very big up in that Norway area, whereas you're seeing a lot more power metal and where you're seeing a lot more power metal and melodic death metal in Finland. You see and more of a Gothenburg type of speed metal approach over in Sweden. Oh, you see a lot more black metal over in your country of Norway. Well, absolutely, Sky. We should all visit visit those great areas. It'd be freaking amazing. But the next country we're going to be adding onto this list is definitely going to be a fun one for us. This is going to be the country of who am I going to be adding onto this list next? Oh my gosh. Pardon me for 1 second. I kind of blank in my mind right here. No, but actually the next country we're going to be adding onto this list is, believe it or not, going to be the country of France. We see bands like Gojira out of this area. Really good stuff from Gojira. Definitely puts France on the map to where you really can't argue with France being on here, at least for a starting point purpose. Like I said, don't expect France to be a winner when it's all said and done, because Gojira is really the biggest standout band I can think of from France. Still good stuff. And then we're going to see a Celtic metal band actually helping us out, put Switzerland on the map with Illuviti. Illuviti being a very popular folk metal band on there, really putting that country onto the front lines, giving us just a bit more of a taste going forward. Interesting stuff there. But like I said, we're talking about Germany also. They also have the industrial metal scene, of course, headed by Rammstein, which is a band that nobody can discount ever in this entire world. Now, another one of these countries we're getting ready to add on here is going to be Poland, with the band Behemoth spearheading that effort right there. Not much else comes to mind as far as Poland from a first standpoint. Now, I mean, obviously, I'm just trying to base all this off the top of my head, so I will miss things every now and then. So, if I miss your favorite band, please mention it in the chat. Let me know, so that way I don't feel like a complete asshole for forgetting it. Like I said, all we're doing right now is trying to establish a baseline of which countries are going to be competing for this title. Not so much of an elimination process right now where we're just saying, well, that country's not metal enough, or that country doesn't have enough influence, or this country doesn't have enough good stuff coming out of it. Next country we're adding on here is actually going to be Portugal, with the band Moonspell putting us on the radar for them. Moonspell being a kind of a progressive death band in a lot of ways, giving us a bit more of that kind of taste. I'm also going to go ahead and include the Netherlands, because the Netherlands is where we get bands like Epica from, which Epica, if you guys don't know, is concurrently the leader worldwide, I would say, in the symphonic metal genre, unless you still consider the influence of Nightwish to be bigger than theirs. You may do so. It's kind of a back and forth for me personally, because it is a little bit of a question mark at this point. As you can see, we've included the United States as a whole. We're going to individually dice up those states in a concurrent and a new episode later on. But we have France, we have Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, the UK, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Portugal. Now, if you stayed with only those countries, I think you would never have any problems going forward. But you'd be missing quite a bit as far as some really good stuff out there. You really would be. Canada, we're actually going to include them. One of the bands that helps me include this is actually a band that I recently reviewed, Unleash the Archers. Really good stuff from there. And of course, you cannot discount the metal influence of Rush. Rush is not a metal band as far as being a true metal band, but being a progressive band, they do have an amazing amount of influence on the metal community. Therefore, they are considered in the metallic genre, so to speak. The next country we're going to be actually introducing on here is going to be one that many of you have probably been thinking of, as far as being able to actually spearhead, if you will, one entire country all by themselves in so many ways. This one band has the ability to really hold this one country up by itself And really, if you think about it, there's not too much else out there that really hard stands out from this one country. You do have a band like Angra standing out in this country, but the country of Brazil is actually on this map due in part to one major band, that being Sepultura. Now, of course, you may consider Soulfly to be part of that because obviously Max Cavalera is from there. So it's one of those where it depends on what type of influence you are and what type of hard stuff you're actually including on this list as far as a showcase material basis. That's right. We're getting technical on this list right now. We're getting technical. And now we're going to, as we see the map starting to really evolve for us. We see, of course, Brazil in there, giving us some South American influence. We see some Spanish. We see a lot of these countries starting to fill in Europe. We're going to actually include Australia next. Australia is going to be the next country we're adding onto this list. Due a lot in part to what they offer going forward. What they offer as far as going forward on the list is a little different than what you may or may not see. They actually have a lot of bands that, if you really just look at their names, don't exactly sound like they would be bands from Australia, based off the name styles. One of the big things about them is that they're the biggest. A lot of the biggest bands from there are actually not really metal. They're more hard rock, heavy metal. These are bands like AC/DC, Airborne, which is basically AC/DC 2.0, Black Tide. Black Flag's from the U.S. hardcore scene. Black Tide is a heavy metal band full of teenagers from like 10 years ago that broke up or something like that when they were just getting popular, which I got so mad about. And we also see bands like Wolfmother, again from that hard rock kind of scene. But really, what makes them special as far as in the metal area is bands like Belakor, which is actually a band that I literally would never have thought was actually from Australia, based off the name and how it's spelled. Or also Ne Oblivisceris, which is also another one of these bands that doesn't sound like it would be from Australia. Virgin Black being a gothic band. We see a couple of these bands, emerging from here, that gives us a bit of a taste of what they actually can and do accomplish for us going forward. It's a really it's not as big of a melting pot or pool in the hard rock heavy metal scene as you would like it to be, at least as far as I would like it to be for Australia, but it still has enough of an influence to at least get them to the second round as far as I'm concerned, because we're not hard eliminating yet. We're trying to first establish baseline countries and really develop the full list and then go into the process of elimination. So right now we have in a lot of ways, the countries that are going to win on there, but on the list are pretty much all on there at this point, but we still want to be able to continue to build the list up so that way anyone can look back later on and not kick me in the nuts and say, you're a piece of crap, you don't know this country's history or this country's origin. And I go, no, because I forget things a lot. I'm sorry. I want to be inclusive. I'm so sorry. And also, considering we haven't broken down the individual states of the United States, it would be very hard for me to go much beyond that at this point. Now, another band that we have to include on here, as far as another country that we have to include on here, is definitely going to be the country of Greece. We see bands like Rotting Christ in there. We see bands like Skeptic Flesh on there. Just bands that have a really aggressive, just aggro sound on there that really give us a different appeal as far as that goes, but help establish that kind of scene to where we have no reason to we can't include Greece on this chart. Another country that we're going to have to include on this chart is going to be Italy, due major in parts to the power metal band Rhapsody in Fire. Really a big part of the power metal scene as far as right now. That really puts them on the Miggity map. Good stuff right there. Good stickety stuff right there. Now, as we can see, most of Europe is starting to get filled in at this point. Very few of the main countries are left as far as that goes. But one of the big countries that we haven't included yet that we're going to have to include is going to be the country of Austria, due to the folk atmospheric metal band, which is Summoning. Summoning's a very chill kind of metal band that you almost could listen to while you're falling asleep, kind of like Opeth Past the Damnation album, or sorry, actually Past the Watershed album, but Damnation's part of that kind of chill Opeth kind of environment. To where Austria is definitely on the map as far as I'm concerned. But we keep on going right here, and also when I was talking about Canada earlier, I forgot to mention Devin Townsend. So forgive me, industrial progressive people, for not including Devin Townsend on there as part of my conversation for legitimizing my placement of Canada as being in this conversation. We're going to add two more, and we're going to almost finish off kind of the little brother as far as it goes is Denmark. And Denmark gets included in here due to the band King Diamond, very well known in that scene. But a country that might surprise you is the country of Israel. Israel is a country that you probably wouldn't think of from music too much unless you're a real fan of really good progressive music. And I say it like that because I really do mean it. Progressive music is one of my favorite, and it has this folky atmosphere behind it that really just gives you just so much of a tiff and an appeal that I can't tell you how much I enjoy it. And I really enjoy the band Orphaned Land. And Orphaned Land is very popular, of course, but they help us legitimize Israel being our first and probably only Middle Eastern country off the top of my head that I can really think of being involved in this conversation. And that's really one of those things where it's just they help legitimize that country as far as being in that conversation, or at least being able to hang with that conversation through part one of this conversation. Next up, we're going to be looking back a little bit and adding the country of Ireland. And the country of Ireland is going to be added on here mostly in part due to the band Primordial. Primordial is kind of a progressive type of band in a lot of ways, really well known for what they offer. Just really solid through and through. They just have this kind of Celtic feel about them. Their album to the Nameless Dead is just one of the best as far as in the metal genre. Definitely just a really well constructed album, and they just have this kind of black metal feel while still putting in Celtic elements and really these folky kind of feels that really just help build this kind of vibe that you can feel, and it's really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. It just helps me just really just get into it, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to put it. That's kind of the best way to put it on there. Now, one country that you probably never would have ever imagined would actually be included in this conversation is going to actually be the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands are actually going to be concluded in this conversation just for minute, if you will. And that is because the Faroe Islands are actually that little joke of an island is actually included in here because of their inclusion of the band of their band. I forget how it's pronounced, but it's Tyr or something like that. So the Faroe Islands, which I believe are up here, yep, that's the Faroe Islands, are actually home to Tyr. And that does actually get one of the countries that pretty much I can only imagine only has one major band from there actually on the map. So congratulations, Faroe Islands, you've been included. Yay, Faroe Islands. Somebody's going to shoot me in like 5 seconds. I can just already feel it. Oh my gosh. But no, we're having a lot of fun right now. Definitely just ripping apart certain countries. We are going to actually include Russia on here just to start us out. It's hard to put Russia on this list just because Russia doesn't have. You'd think a country as big as Russia would have a lot more influence in the metal community than they actually do. Just because it's a big country, a lot of population. I think in a lot of ways their lack of general freedom has actually stinted their ability to really be involved in their They have some new metal influence on there. They have some pagan folk on there with Arcona. I mean, this was just in general that their influence is nowhere near as big as a country as big as theirs should be. But that doesn't matter for the conversation right now. The conversation is just developing which countries actually have metal influence. So Russia is actually being included on this list. So I have a feeling that in the next 15 seconds I'm going to get shot by somebody. So just prefacing that right now. Just prefacing that right now. No, don't shoot me, please. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. But yeah, it's just one of those where at this point we're starting to really have to reach to be able to actually get our any more countries on this list. We're going from places where we had countries that really had a true influence on there to countries that really were just at this point just kind of pushing, I guess, if you will, for it. We're not really experimenting anymore. We're kind of just pushing for it. That's kind of the best way to put it, I guess you could say. Now, I may be missing anything, so if anyone has any ideas, please speak your mind and let me know that grind. What's up? God loves terriers. He actually does. I talked to him once about it. He said, I like terriers, and I was like, that's cool, bro. He was like, no, it's not. It's not cool, bro. I was like, okay, God, you're the one who said it. He's a little interesting to talk to sometimes because he'll just stare you down and just be like, "Sup, come on, sup." Anyway, back to the conversation. We actually are going to, believe it or not, include the Ukraine on there due to the band Drudak, and that's going to be an atmospheric black, pagan black kind of band on there. So we are going to see the Ukraine get included on there. Pretty much, it's hard to find a reason to illegitimize a lot of the other countries in here. Now the thing is that, believe it or not, Belgium is not going to get added to this list. Belgium, I just can't think of, or even through searching databases to make sure I have my memory jogged. I really can't see enough of a generic just starting influence really on there to really just say, okay, they deserve to be on this list. And most of it has to do with just one band in particular or two band in particular really pushing that boundary line, really pushing that spot forward for it. And that's just the thing, is I just don't see it on that band. Anywhere near as much as I do see it for Iceland with Solstifar, which is a folk metal band that has a really good influence, and actually a new album out from like 2 weeks ago. Really good stuff there with that genre, with that feel, with that appeal, with that deal. And then we're also going to add the country of Andorra. Andorra is actually a country we are going to actually add. I did not think I'd be adding Andorra, but Persephone is actually from Andorra, and so we are adding Andorra to the list, at least for right now. This is really kind of, if you can look at this from the kind of wide scope, there are a buttload of other countries that have metal bands. I'm not saying there is no metal scene from these countries, and I'm not saying they don't have an influence in their own kind of region. If a country is not on this list right now, it does not mean they have no metal scene whatsoever. It doesn't. It just means there isn't enough of a baseline there to really legitimately say this country in any way could contend for best country for metal. Really, when it comes down to it, there are so many countries out there, and a lot of these countries do have one band that actually does have a bit of an influence, that does have a bit of a charisma, so to speak. That does have a bit of a flavor. But there aren't any other countries out there that really have a legitimate, I guess, band that breaks the mold, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but essentially at this point, from this point forward, we're needing something else. We're needing something that actually showcases, hey, this band takes your country to the next level. This band allows you to be in the conversation of best country source for metal. And like I said, you can search it around. There are plenty of other countries that have metal influence in there. I mean, If we were really going all out, balls to the wall, just including any country that had a legitimate fan base for a band or for anything else, we can include the countries of Japan. We can include Tunisia, actually. We can include Chile. We could probably even make a case for Mexico, but we're not going to make a case for Mexico because Mexico is where the hobos grow. No, I'm kidding around. Mexico rocks. Just work on your metal scene. All right, just work on your metal scene. But really, that's the thing is that, a lot of these other countries just don't have the type of power when it comes to being able to build that legitimate just metal roster, if you will. There's just not a lot else out there that really just gives you that kind of power, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to say it, guys, but we're trying to work on that beyond that. So let me just go ahead and make a little list of what's going in, and that way we'll be able to kind of go from there in a little bit. But, essentially, as far as the countries that we have on this list so far, that we're moving on to the next one. We have the U.S. as a whole. We have to divide up the U.S., which we're going to probably do because this video has not been very long so far. It's been about 30 minutes. I'll probably actually stop the stream about right here, and we'll do the U.S. part in a little bit. But we have the U.S., we have Canada, we have Brazil, we have Iceland, we have the UK, Ireland, we have Australia, we have Israel, we have Norway, Finland, Sweden, Germany, Italy, France, Russia. We have Poland, where the Poles are. We have Poland. Poland's on there. I'm just kidding around. We have Austria, the Faroe Islands. LOL. I just wanted to put the Faroe Islands on there, to be honest with you. We have Portugal. We have Greece. We have the Netherlands. We have Denmark. And we have, let's see, did I miss anything that I was mentioning out of Andorra? Again, Andorra was kind of one of those picks that I just wanted to put Andorra on there, and of course also Ireland. Well, Ireland I actually put on there as far as my mental note, and the Ukraine. But as far as it goes, guys, that's our starting point for the conversation of where the best metal music is actually from, or where the best country for metal is actually from. Not so much the best music, because that becomes a completely derivative conversation. In the next video, we're going to be talking about making actual hard cases for individual countries to be able to stay in there, eliminating all the countries that really don't deserve it, and developing which countries have that hard base. Again, the U.S. will be considered individually by states. So we will be in the next episode, which is actually a 1.5. We'll be eliminating U.S. states that don't fit the mixture. Anyway, Warriors, as always, keep stealing those kneecaps. Peace.